This is Maurice Jones-Drew, and you're listening to the What's Bruin Show.
You're listening to the What's Bruin Show, part of the What's Bruin Show network, with your hosts, Jake Berryfield and Mike Regalado, and occasionally some friends, talking all things UCLA sports. And now, it's time for the What's Bruin Show.
Well, hello and welcome to What's Bruin. I am your host, Jake Merrifield, and I'm coming to you just a day after UCLA women's basketball takes out the Ohio State Buckeyes to remain undefeated and go to 22-0, 10-0 in conference in the Big Ten, and number one in the country as well. And then just 2 nights after UCLA men's basketball takes down Michigan State with a nice last-second shot, 63-61, after beating up on Oregon, and a nice little run of 6 in a row, including 3 ranked opponents. So good times for UCLA basketball. Mike is not with us today because he had to work both games, and I'm just going to do something real short here, just to wait until we talk about it next week when we are back together on Tuesday, I presume. But good things for UCLA men's and women's basketball both. So with the men's team, that happened on Tuesday night, and they take down the Spartans, number 9 in the country Spartans, and number 1 in the Big Ten at that point too. And it was great. You watch the post-game interviews with Izzo and Cronin. They're very complimentary of each other, obviously, but 2 great old coaches kind of talking and I think very, very insightful. But for the game itself, this was one where it wasn't necessarily, Adamar continues to play a big role with this team, although this wasn't the game with his biggest impact, I don't think. But, once again, he's, over 20 minutes in the game. But Tyler Bilodeau kind of bounced back in this game, and he was kind of a good go-to guy for him, even though nobody on the floor for either team really shot well, like 36% overall combined for both teams. But the Bruins, and not surprised it was a big defensive matchup, right? But the Bruins grinded it out. And then, Eric Daly down the stretch, the big shot to seal the deal, and really, I don't think you can have too many complaints with this team during this win streak all around, considering that, they're dropping 94, 85, 82, and 78 points in 4 of these games. But then in the 2 that they had to win in defensive matchup on the road at Washington, and then this game at home to Michigan State, they're also able to win kind of the slow down game as well too. So whatever Cronin did during the 4-game losing streak to get these guys turned around and toughen them up, it certainly seems like that is what is happening, and it's great to see, because now they're heading down the stretch of the schedule, and really they only have 2 ranked opponents right now left at Illinois in what is that? It's on the 11th, and then at Purdue on 2/28. And other than that, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like 8 games left to kind of build momentum going into the tournament. But you have to say that with how the different guys in this team are kind of performing right now, hey, maybe they got a run in them. I don't know. But it just seems like there's a lot of dudes in this team that have their heads on, screwed on straight right now and are playing well. And if Bilodeau is 100% health-wise, I know he still is not quite there yet. You have Bilodeau, you have Dylan Andrews, who was absolutely dreadful earlier in the season, but then kind of heated up. He wasn't that good against Michigan State, at least from the field this time. But other guys stepped up in their, in their place. Like Glazer Stefanovic came out and dropped 3 for 3 with 2 3-pointers, and he only had 8 points. But but there's only a few guys in this entire game on both sides. 2 guys in the whole game that ended up, 3 guys that ended up in double figures anyway, and that's Bilodeau and Sky Clark and Jaden Akins for Michigan State. So, when you look at teams that are going to have to grind out victories in defensive contests, which you think that the tournament might end up having a lot of games like that, you have to feel comfortable with the Bruins being able to do that, and knowing Mick Cronin's background, number one, and the character of his teams that he's shown out there. And then you just look across the guys that are actually playing, and yeah, there's no guy that you point to that's like a legit, like, oh my gosh, just superstar type go-to guy, I don't think, but they have plenty of guys who can step up on a given night, right? And that's kind of, short of having the guy that is just the absolute, bucket, having a bunch of guys that could be a bucket is probably pretty good, and in different ways too, because obviously, Mara is going to, if he gets it in close, the shots are falling now, and so that's one sort of reliability. And Bilodeau is very savvy, and Daly has shown that he could heat up. And then Andrews and Clark and Stefanovic to a degree, and Mac too. Mac comes in, does his thing, and all of a sudden there's 4, 6, 8 points on the board. But they're all pulling in the same direction, which I think is what is super important. And as we watch this team go down the stretch, that's all you kind of hope for, because that's what Cronin will be judged on, right? That's what UCLA basketball, that's what college basketball is judged by at the end of the day. It would be great if UCLA was going to win the Big Ten in their first season in the Big Ten, but they kind of, that kind of, for the most part, went out the window when they had the lull and the losing streak. But really, as long as you're finishing in a position where you're getting a decent enough spot in the tournament, well, then that's really what you're going to be judged on. And the Bruins aren't that far out of it, right? They're 8-4, and the Purdue is 10-2. They still play Purdue, so it's not inconceivable they get into the conference race, but they're still back. They're fourth in the conference, so. Like best case scenario, they don't lose another game coming down the stretch, and now they're playing Purdue for the Big Ten title, or something like that. But even if that's not the case, they can still get themselves into a very nice seed for the tournament, and that'll do just fine. Now shifting over to the women's team, who really they hadn't been challenged yet this season, really, especially not in the last month or so, and it seemed like, even when it was a tight contest early on, they would just blow it open late. And it didn't seem like that was the game they were going to get against Ohio State. In fact, Ohio State had it tied with 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And this is a game where the Bruins were sloppier than they usually are. A lot of turnovers from the Bruins in this game. I think they averaged something like 13, and they ended up with like 23 or 24, 23 turnovers. And the field goal percentage was fine, but it wasn't terrific. But the game was neck and neck through 3 quarters and a little chunk in the fourth. And then the Bruins did what they've done all year, seemingly, and that is just step on the gas with a huge run down the stretch and get the separation to where this was a laugher with a few minutes left in the game. And, by the time we got to, I said it was tied with 9.5 minutes in the fourth. And by the time we get to, 6 minutes or 5 minutes left in the fourth, the Bruins are up by 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points. And it just was a beautiful burst from the Bruins and put the game away. And then at the end of the game, you're like, wow, this was a really tough game. If you watched the first 3 quarters, the number 1 Bruins versus the number 8 Ohio State Buckeyes. But you look at the stat sheet, Bruins shoot 45%. Almost 46% to under 30% for the Buckeyes. The Bruins hit a quarter of their 3-point shots to 17% for the Buckeyes. The Bruins out-rebounded the Buckeyes 49-33. So it really was dominating, but a lot of that domination came down the stretch, I think, and a little bit of that is kind of like the shots fell a little bit more at the end than they did through stretches at the beginning of the game. But geez, if this is what they're going to be like against the stiff competition that's left in the Big Ten schedule and heading into the tournament, then my goodness, they still have 2 big matchups against the Trojans, and obviously that's going to be Player of the Year candidate versus Player of the Year candidate with Betts versus Juju. And that's going to be, those are going to be greatly anticipated games coming down the stretch. And then they also have a game against Michigan State, who's ranked 20th in the country. But, those are going to be the tale of whether or not UCLA, whether they bring the first Big Ten title home for women's basketball in the first season of the Big Ten. And that'll be quite an accomplishment. But, if they're going to play like this, game in and game out, there's no reason why they can't do it. And I think, it's going to be tough playing SE twice in such a short period of time, but these ladies have shown that they really can, get it done. And I was kind of surprised during the game with how sloppy the Bruins did look at moments. And a lot of that was Ohio State just getting deflections and getting jumping passing lanes and all that stuff. And obviously they were prepared to give the Bruins a contest in this one. But just the talent of UCLA was just undeniable in this game. And it's kind of like by the end of the game, they rack up all those stats and they end up racking up a relatively easy victory in the fourth quarter. And it's just because you can only maintain, I guess, that effort against these Bruins for so long. So let's hope that holds for the rest of the season, and into the tournament. And they have big things going on for the tournament, but that will remain to be seen. Now, so I don't have a lot more to talk about today, and like I said, this is kind of a little impromptu, a little update here, just for my quick thoughts about what happened in those two big games. But also this week, Chip Kelly ended up going from Ohio State as the coordinator to becoming like the highest paid offense coordinator, I think, in the NFL under Pete Carroll for the Las Vegas Raiders. And it's like, could that fit any better for UCLA fans to despise Chip Kelly anymore, going over there with Pete to deal with the Raiders. And this week he was on the audible with Stu Mandel and Bruce Feldman. He's very tight with Bruce Feldman. Obviously, he has been over the years. And just once again, he repeated his little story about how he went from UCLA to Ohio State. And it was at the top of the interview. I didn't have the stomach to listen to the whole thing because I didn't really feel like listening to him talk about how great it was at Ohio State and the challenges they overcame. And just, oh my God, just want to make me throw up. But just one final thing with Chip and his walking out of the Bruins. And obviously, when the Bruins hired him, it was a no-brainer hire. It's kind of like I talked about on West Coast Bias with Jamaal the other day, and is like the Luka Doncic trade. It might not work out, but there absolutely is no question that the deal had to be done. It was an absolute no-brainer, and from all accounts, a slam dunk from just the process standpoint of it, right? And that's what hiring Chip Kelly was way back when UCLA decided to do it. And then from that point forward, it just didn't work out like it was supposed to. And, in hindsight, it's because Chip Kelly didn't want to run a major college football program, especially with all the changes coming to major college football. And that was, at the end of the day, the Bruins' loss. He put together a competent program, right? A program that was, relatively professional acting, but he didn't want to do the things to put himself over the edge or put himself into a position to succeed despite all the support that UCLA wanted to give him. And you can grouse about, UCLA administration this and UCLA administration that, but at the end of the day, they gave Chip Kelly basically a blank check to do whatever he wanted, and the things he did were not very effective, even if some of the unconventional stuff he did and was ahead of the curve on, like with the portal launch stuff, did work out, But he put together teams that I like to watch for UCLA. He put together an offense that I like to watch for UCLA, but he couldn't break through in the big moments. He choked in a lot of bad moments, and he had some of the worst losses that any UCLA coach has ever had, especially given, the situation. And then he just surrendered and left like a thief in the night and left UCLA holding the bag. And certainly UCLA and its administration is not blameless in all of this. And hopefully, they can, they're in the process of bouncing back, in this Deshaun Foster era. But now Kelly will be with the Raiders just, a couple hundred miles away over in Nevada. And I guess we'll see what type of success he'll have on offense when he no longer has the best talent or, the top 3 talent in the country, because he certainly does not have that in Las Vegas. And we'll see what he can manufacture under Pete Carroll and that administration. So I grew up a Raider fan. I haven't been a Raider fan for a number of years, kind of once they bounced out of LA and then bounced to Oakland and just became just a absolute circus with the the horrible ownership of Mark Davis and all that nonsense. Just a very hard team to root for at this point, even though I know many diehard Raider fans. But this kind of solidifies, it kind of, extinguishes the candle, so to speak, of any of my Raider fandom. I think I used to just have a little part of my heart that was still partial to the silver and black, but I don't know if it's there anymore. And part of that is certainly, hiring Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly in 2025. That's really going to put a damper on any love I have for the Raiders, even though I still one of the best songs of NFL lore is the Raider theme song, "The Autumn Wind's a Pirate," and I still love it. But now I just can't root for that team in any way, shape, or form. So bolt up. So that's it. I don't got too much more. I hope you guys enjoy your weekend. The Bruins, the men's team plays Penn State on the 8th, and then at Illinois on the 11th. And the women's squad, they have the Ducks at the Ducks on the 9th, and then that big game at USC on the 13th. So let's keep it rolling, keep the wins coming in for UCLA hoops on both sides of it. And until next time, pray for Mike. He's working hard, but go Bruins.
Good evening.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em.
That was the What's Bruin Show.
Try us tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
It's gotta be in or out, Mom. In or out. Well, I need the door closed.
Thank you for your cooperation.
Dude, Rob, we play some ball on the West Coast.
The final word is boob.